There's nothing I like more than a double feature, and this is going to be a Goodreads double feature. I did it last year where I, yelled about the Goodreads awards and then talked about their most popular books of the last year. But this year they have of the decade, and I feel confident because I read three of them on the little poster. So let's see how we go. So the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to get a point for every book that I've read. There are 76 books. So we're going to see how well I do. The joy of it is the fact that I don't always read the most popular books. I sometimes do. I've been on BookTube for 6, nearly going on 7 years. I don't always read the most popular books right away, but I tend to get to them eventually. So I do think that being the whole decade, it will help. Let us go and see if I'm really a reader or not. Okay, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, check. The Girl on the Train, no. I think that I still get this messed up with the girl with the tattoo, with the dragon tattoo. Where the Crawdads Sing, yes. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I have not read this one. I know it is like a scandal that I have not. Matt Haig's The Midnight Library, I've not read. Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, I've not read. Educated by Tara Westover, I've not read. This one I get recommended in person a lot because I talk about how much I love memoirs, and yet I have not read this. I'm always slightly afraid of books that are like rough and tumble kind of things, but I feel like I probably would like this book. Daisy Jones and the Sixth, I have read this, so I have 3 out of 8. Normal People by Sally Rooney, I have 4. I really like this book. I know that sometimes people don't like it. I'm a Sally Rooney person through and through, except for Beautiful People, so only 2 out of 3. And then we have The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. You can tell that I really don't like World War II fiction very much because I don't know if I've read Eddie. I'm afraid of them. I don't really want to read about Nazism. That's just like things where I'm like, maybe not. And then The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. I have not read this one. Becoming, I have read this and I loved it. I like broke down sobbing because of this book. I think that it is a really good book on like being a woman, on infertility, about growing up and like how we view our family and all of those things. I think it's just a really lovely book. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. My controversial belief is that this is her best book. I really like it. I think that it's just a really marvelous book that I love the family dynamics. I love all the different things it's driving. I think it's really good. Eleanor Elephant is Completely Fine is a book that I have had recommended to me countlessly. I have tried. I hated it. I DNF'd it. I really don't like grossness, and there's like too much conversation about like fingernails and dirt, and I was just like, I'm good. Atomic Habits by James Clear. I don't like self-help books. I tend to not read them. I tend to think that they are things that oversimplify how hard it is to change and to do good therapy and to do all of those things that you need to do. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt is a book that I have not read. I started The Secret History this year and I did not get along with it, so who knows. The Tattooist of Auschwitz is another World War II book that I probably will never pick up. If you're mentioning Auschwitz in like fiction, it just feels yucky. I don't want to read a book that will probably have some redemptiveness of it. I just want to, I don't know, set that aside and let it be an atrocity that we think about in nonfiction. A Little Life is a book I probably also will never pick up. It has a bad reputation, and I do love tragedy. I love hurt. I love all of those things. Do I want a book that's so focused on that and just like relentlessly and coming from a voice that is speaking outside of their own experience? I don't think so. Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty. This is one of my roommate's favorite books, and I have told her several times that I will read it, so I probably will. Lessons in Chemistry. This is a book that is kind of on my maybe shelf. The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett is a book that I feel like lives up to its name and then some. I think that is such an extraordinary novel, and I think her debut book, The Mothers, is a book that is underrepresented in how amazing it is. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin is a book that I've waffled on reading, and I think that I probably landed on the not going to read ever. I'm Glad My Mother Died by Jeanette McCurdy, one of the most popular books of last year. I read it. I liked it. I didn't love it. I wasn't amazed in some of the ways that other people were, but I definitely liked it. Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This is a book that I've actually thought that I might read. I heard a wonderful review by Murphy Napier several years ago about it, and I was like, yeah. And I really like the adaptation of her books, Firefly Lane. So I feel like I might read this eventually. It's set in Alaska. The Spanish Love Deception is a book I probably won't read. When Breath Becomes Air is a book that was recommended to me by my friend who's a med student, so I feel like I will read it eventually for her sake. Anxious People by Frederick Bachman is a favorite of mine. It's probably not like my favorite, but it's like definitely like in my top 100 books. Born a Crime by Trevor Noah is a book that I've been meaning to read for a really long time, and I have not. A Gentleman Born in Moscow is another historical fiction. I don't know if it is World War II or Cold War. Either way, I don't think I'm interested. The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is my darling. I really like Celeste Ng. I haven't read her third novel yet, but her first two are books that I really, really enjoy. Before We Were Yours, I've like teetered on this. I grew up loving stories of orphans and how like they were, outside of the world. And like, I think that I really identified as a person who had a little bit of a harder time feeling like I belonged in my family and belonged in my community. I feel like I really associated with orphans, primarily Anne Shirley, who's up there, but I definitely loved orphans in general. But then I feel like that's such a sacred thing for me that sometimes I'm like, I don't want to read a book that does it badly. Everything I Never Told You is Celeste Ng's first novel, and I think that is just incredible. I really love it. It follows the Asian American family in all of its nuances when the daughter reveals secrets and disappears, and it's really good. Such a Fun Age is a book that is down there, and I still have not read. I've been meaning to read it for several years. American Dirt is a book that was probably one of the most controversial books of 2020. It got really badly reviewed for the ways that it took other people's traumas and represented them. It is a book about the Mexican American experience told by an author that is very, very distantly related to it, and it has come under a lot of scrutiny. For that reason, I have no interest in reading it. I did have someone who socially told me they were going to read it, and it was a person I did not know very well in a passing conversation, and I like bit my lip and I was like, is this the moment I go on the book rant about how terrible it is, or do I just let this moment pass? And I let that moment pass, and I still sometimes think about that moment and go, should I have told that person one? It's the same thing when someone says, I love reading James Patterson, and I go, Pachinko is a book I've been meaning to read for many years, and I have not read it. Andy Weir's Hail Mary. I love to see some sci-fi on here. I have not read this. I feel like I'll read Andy Weir's fiction books at one point. I've read his graphic novel. It was not very good, but, I feel like that was written for his children. They begged me to publish it, so I did, and I was like, we probably could have gone without. The Husband's Secret, I have not read. Station 11, I have read. I really love Emily St. John Mandel's works, especially The Glass Castle, which is one of her other novels, and yeah, I'm really excited to see this on the list. Sally Rooney, Beautiful World, Where Are You? I told you, I read this book. I didn't love it as much. I don't know. I feel like I've softened on it and have wanted to reread it as time has gone on. Heartstopper, Volume 1, I have read. Carrie Soto is Back, another Taylor Jenkins Reads that I love. You know which famous author I am a person for, you can tell. The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. I've heard that this is popular around historical fiction lovers. I have not read it. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Red Rising is a book that I'm surprised that I still have not read. It has tilted because it was like so popular when I first started booktube, and I love sci-fi and I love fantasy, and yet I never read it. The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. I will read one day. Crying in H Mark. I feel like I want to read this book. I know that it's really sad. It came out around the death of my grandfather, and I still have not touched it, and I get it out of the library so often, and then I look at it and go, no, not today. Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Beartown by Frederick Bachman, excellent book. Conversations with Friends, one of my favorite books. On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vaughn. This is a book that I started. I liked the beginning of it, but I didn't really get into it. I have finished his first poetry collection. I have started his most recent poetry collection. I'm not sure that he's the author for me. I don't know, if I read this on audiobook one day I will read it maybe, but I'm not that compelled anymore, despite the fact that it is an excellent title. Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan is a series that I have read all of the books, and I have a soft spot for. I think they're great. I really love footnotes. I love satire. I love crazy things. I was really disappointed by his follow-up series. I thought that it was not very good. The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. I have a vendetta against her because of her disability representation. I have very strong feelings about that in The Me Before You. Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelley Van Pett. The Lost Apothecary. Before the Coffee Gets Cold, another book that I really, really love. The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. A book that I've been meaning to read for so long. I have it on my shelf. I'm determined that I'm going to make the most detailed notes of Margaret Atwood's books, which just delay me from reading them because I overstress myself, but I'm sure I'm going to love it. I've heard great things. My Year of Rest and Relaxation, I have read. Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. I have heard unpleasant things about the way that this represents the Stanford rape case, and I'm like, no thank you. Orphan Train, I feel like this has similar thoughts to my other ones. Americana, this is a book that I've been meaning to read for so long, and I don't know if I ever will read it. The Dutch House by Anne Patchett, another book that, I don't know, I've been inching toward reading Tom Lake, which might also inch me toward reading this. Homegoing, a book that is really difficult but so beautiful. Transcendent Kingdom, another book by her, is one of my favorites of all time. An American Marriage by Tayari Jones, a book that I was so hyped for and I didn't like. I'm really sad that I did not like this book, but I understand what it's doing and I think that it has many incredible scenes and conversations out of it, but it was not a favorite of mine. Between the World and Me, I have read another essay collection by him, but I have not read this one. Claire and the Sun by Kazuo Shiro is his only book that I absolutely love, which a lot of people don't feel that way, but I think that it just deals with artificial intelligence and all of these other things in really interesting ways. Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. I have this as a want to read, which is surprising to me, but it's about therapy, and my background is as a therapist, so I feel like that's probably why I had it. I don't know if I want to read it. I always feel deep and conflicted thoughts whenever therapy is talked about because I feel like sometimes it gets really wrong, and I know it's very like tenuous and very hard. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, again, one of my all-time favorite books. I think that it deals well with dismantling the idea of Lolita, of how we sexualize young teenage girls, and the way that we don't realize abuse is happening when it's happening. I think it's such an incredible book. It's like seared into my brain in like a really, really special, intimate, hard way. A Promised Land by Barack Obama. I got it at a thrift store for $2 shortly after it came out, and that made me happy. I really love Becoming, so I've been like thinking that I'm gonna read this, but it's so long, and I don't know if I actually want to read a book by him. I don't know. I'm Canadian, I'm not American, so it's like less urgent for me. Mad Honey, Sea of Tranquility. This is Emily St. John Mandel's latest work, and I liked it well enough. I didn't love it. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I have an entire review about this, and I am not very kind. I think that parts of it are lovely, parts of it are humanizing and amazing and talk about addiction. It just didn't do it for me. Spare by Prince Harry. I like flirted with the idea of reading this, but I don't think I will. Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. I will read this book one day. That is being put in writing. Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. I don't think I'll read this. I don't like serial killers, which I think it's about, or crime or something about that. I don't know. It was also whimsical. I heard many reviews about it. Killer Flowers of the Moon. This is the one that was about the founding of the FBI that became a big blockbuster movie. I may read the movie, but Greg from Supposedly Fun actually did a video about this. It's much more about the FBI than actually about the removal of land and indigenous people. So yeah, probably not going to be a book that I'm going to pick up. So I read 26 out of 76, which is a great 34%. I am definitely a well-read author, well-round. I refer to myself as an author instead of a reader there. I definitely wonder how they calculate this because there's no classics on here, and they didn't have any classics on last year's thing, but they did on several years ago. And like, it's surprising to me that like a book like The Great Gatsby or 1984 Animal Farm that are like widely given in schools, To Kill a Mockingbird, that they would not be on here, like even if they're old classic books, that they would not have been like shelved so many times in the last 10 years. And then there's also the interesting thing that like no, especially Americana came out in like 2006 or 2008 or something like that. So it's not all books published in the last 10 years. My favorite book on this was probably My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and it's like not the most well-known book, so I'm very happy to see it on this list. And yeah, let me know what some of your favorite books of the last 10 years are. I have a wonderful video from the spring where I talk about 100 books I think you should read before you die, and many of my favorite books from the last 10 years and from, you know, general are on there, and I think that it is a great place if you're looking for recommendations, and Goodreads kind of sucks sometimes. So that one also has a diversity of age ranges and genre and different types of books. I think that that's really important. And yeah, I will see you next time.